Coming to you from the world of AV control and programming with James King, I'm Steve Greenblatt, and this is Ask the Programmer. Hi, James. Welcome back, and I'm glad we're getting together for another episode.
Hey, Steve, how's it going? It's great to be back. Looking forward to the topic we have today.
And before we jump right in, I know that you and I were both very, very impressed to get recognized by Tim Albright, who's a podcasting mentor of mine and somebody who I value the opinion of, as well as consider a close friend in the industry. And he reached out and mentioned us on a couple of shows, and I know that meant a lot to both of us.
Yeah, I mean, Tim is definitely someone to look up to in this world of AV. I mean, I've even talked to coworkers, and I'll be mentioning something about AV Nation or Tim, and they all know about Tim, and they're not even involved as much in AV as I am. So he's definitely a icon up there, and to have him recognize our program and what we're doing here is pretty great.
I would agree. And I know he has a sweet spot for programming, and that's one of the places that we've connected as well in the past. So today I wanted to jump in and talk about a topic and an article that you had written, which I thought was really interesting, and maybe you can take us into it, but it really covers the different types of programmers and programming companies or programming solutions, let's call it, from an approach and a strategy standpoint. And I'll let you take it from there.
Yeah, thank you. Again, this is a good topic, I feel. So the article that you're referring to, Steve, is my monthly article for Higher Ed AV Digital Magazine. So the website for that is higheredav.com. And my column is IT and AV. This was the April edition, and the theme for the edition was emerging technology. And when I sat down to write about this, I was first thinking about writing about, like HTML5s and all these programming languages came out. And then I'm like, no, what I'm really looking for this article in the column to address is, because it is geared to higher education, for tech managers of what they need to look for when they're getting programs and the benefits and the cons of each approach. So I kind of jumped in and broke it up into three different ways a school could do it. One being going with the integrator company that they hired to install the equipment. Second is a third-party programming house, kind of like Control Concept. Or third option is an in-house programmer, someone like myself. And the article lists tons of the pros and cons to all three of them. They all do have their own fit, and the tech manager really needs to evaluate them to determine what's best for their school. So what my school does is going to be different than what your school does or the other school does. So we all have the same goal of educating our students, and we got to find out what's the best course of action for our environment.
So for me, the reason that I think that this is such an important topic is that it doesn't necessarily, it spans the whole industry. So it's not limited to any one vertical or any one type of a solution. The idea, and for a long time, there's always been that battle of in-house versus third party. And now throw into the mix the fact that it's also a integrate, say almost like an outside integrator versus an in-house integrator programmer. So you have these three different options, and there are definitely distinct differences between them. And I've always said there's a time and a place for each one, and it's very clear based on your article that that's the case. If we get into a few of those reasons, because I'm sure that this is one of the things that our audience is very interested in, and also would would probably want to weigh in on, because everybody's has different experiences. And I feel like an experience that one person had doesn't necessarily make it so that every company or every individual who fills that role is covered under that blanket statement. So, for example, if you had a bad experience with a third party, that doesn't mean that all third parties are bad. Or if you had a bad experience hiring somebody internally, it doesn't mean that that person or that idea is bad. I can go into this from my perspective, and one of the ways is, that I think about is what is it that you're looking to accomplish? Or you, if you're looking to invest in somebody internally, you need to make sure that you give them the tools that they need to succeed. And if it goes back to our person on an island feeling, that somebody that is not experienced is not going to be able to handle that. And no matter what you do, that is going to probably be a failing proposition if you don't give them what they need to succeed, or put them in a spot where they are not able to keep up with the demand, or have the access to training and knowledge. What are some of the things that you had thought of when you were doing this? And obviously your perspective is going to be different from others' perspectives as well, but I'm sure that this is a conversation that you've had with others.
Yeah, that's a very good point you bring up, is about the person on the island, because that, I feel, is kind of geared towards me. Like, I kind of take that on personally, because I am the only one in my university at this time who can program the AV equipment. And so that was one of the big cons to this area, is for an in-house programmer, is because I'm going to be very limited to what I can do. Like, I know the product we use for our university, I know that stuff pretty well, but I don't know, the others out there. I can learn them. That's something, my own unique personality. I can learn them, but maybe not everyone can. Which then kind of pigeonholes the business, the school, or even a corporate environment, of pigeontoning them into a what I was going to say, ecosystem that may not be right for them. Because we're in technology, it's always advancing, it's always changing. And like I said, our number one goal is to make sure the education of our students are happening. But if I only know how to program system X, and system company X starts having, let's say, financial problems or quality control problems, I'm limited in what I can provide my university. Where if I was maybe a third party house who would have a broad sense, because they could be installing company X, Y, and Z, they have a better understanding. So if, say, their client needs to change from company X to company Y, that change is not a drastic change for them. But going to one of the big benefit of, especially in higher education, and this is always a hot debate on Twitter and AV, Chris Netto's AV and the AM discussion when it comes to programming, is who owns the code. So if I'm an in-house programmer for a company or a university, you're guaranteed that you own the code. That code is unique to your environment. But if you go to a third party or even a integrator, it's water starts getting muddy, because you can put in the contract saying, yeah, the client owns the code. Who says that the integrator or the third party is not taking a code that they did for, let's even use this example, took a code they used for a strip club and put it into a religious school or a church. Now, granted, one might look at it and go, well, who cares? It's strip club, it's all done. But when your naming conventions are kind of, toward the strip club and your church starts seeing these, that might put a bad taste in your client's mouth there.
I would also add the idea that, costs are definitely a factor. So having somebody internally that you can manage that is on salary is likely going to be able to produce a more cost-effective product, and also has access to more information and is going to be a lot more flexible. There are a lot of advantages to having somebody in-house. But the other side of that is this person going to be part of a team or an individual, as you mentioned, and the same actually holds true for a third party. So are you hiring a third party that's a one-man band, or are you hiring a third party that's a team? The thing that I like to tell people a lot is that you really should understand the requirements that go into making that decision. What are the criteria? What are you ready to do? Because I think you and I have talked about this a little bit too, is that, you're not always programming when you're an internal person, and you have to be able to understand that that person needs to fill other voids or needs to stay on payroll while the in between programming projects. But yet in the busy time, there may be more work than they can potentially do, and they may need their efforts to be supplemented. So
you really hit on one of the cons I had for a higher ed in-house programmer. I guess you can apply this to businesses as well. Is like me, I am the in-house programmer, but as we know, code doesn't break. So if I roll my code out to our classrooms, it's not going to break. So as long as the bugs are worked out, it's functional how it is the university is not going to pay me to sit on my hands. So now I'm also, installing equipment, designing systems, troubleshooting systems, speccing equipment. I'm doing all these tasks besides programming. And that also hurts where like this new stuff coming out with HTML5 and these broader programming languages, I may not have the time to sit down during my work hours to learn it, to put it into our environment. So now I either have to do it on my off hours, or we're again getting into that pigeonhole of now I'm limiting what the university is getting from me, because now I'm tied up on other tasks. And that goes back to just having a great team though. So if you have a great team, members who can maybe take on some of those duties, allow the programmer to get out and learn these languages, that's a good part. But not every university or every business has that ability or that relationship.
To that point too, I've heard that there's been some concerns about how much do you invest in somebody, because when you invest in them, then they leave, they take their knowledge, and you're left with a void, and that you've put this money into helping somebody further their career, and now they've taken that to advance and get a better role or position, but at the cost of their previous employer. So it tends to be a slippery slope. Now I could comment about that, and maybe we do that for another show from a business perspective, but it's something that I hear about a lot.
Yeah. And just a quick, I agree. I think that's a good episode for another, like a topic for another episode, but the only saying that keeps coming in my head, I think it's a conversation between a CFO and a CEO where they say, what if we spend all this money and they leave? Another person goes, what if we don't and they stay?
That's a great point. And, and then as we get close to wrapping up, when you look at a third party, I've had people come and say to me, the amount of money that I spent on working with you, I could have had one or two full-time people on staff. And that's always a tough pill to swallow as well. And we could talk about what's involved with that, because it's not as easy as it might sound. But when it comes to economics, and bean counters get involved, that's what they start to look at. And they start to say, what is this costing me, and what am I getting for it, and what's my return on investment? So yeah, I think in the end, what we probably want people to know, and I would love to hear from others that have had different experiences. If you guys can leave, and girls can leave a comment and just share your experiences and thoughts. And I don't think it's a one-sided conversation. And even when you have a bias, I think you can argue it in many different ways. I think the main thing is that there is a place for all these solutions, but and realizing too, I think that there may be a hybrid approach where you can have an internal person who can benefit from external, whether it's an in-house integrator or a third party, because there could be situations similar to what we're trying to develop with Ask the Programmer, where there's collaboration.
Yeah, that's one thing I'm really learning. It's about the relationship, building that collaboration. It's never one size fit all. We all got to work together and help each other achieve our goals.
So we'll leave it there, but let's look for feedback and comments, and this is an ongoing topic that I'm sure we'll be revisiting. In the meantime, James, how can people get in touch with you? And do you have any closing thoughts and things that you wanted to share?
Probably the easiest way to get a hold of me is on Twitter. My username is AB_James King. I'm on LinkedIn. If you want to read the article I wrote that Steve and I talked about, or any other articles I wrote, or also check out all the other great content, swing over higheradab.com. My column is IT and AV, but there's tons of other great content there as well.
I would recommend that. I think it's a great site, and some of our friends, including Joe Way, are behind that, and it's something that I found to be very valuable. For me, you can reach me at Steve Greenblatt very simply on social media, and really enjoy receiving some of the feedback that we've gotten in the past, and would like to connect with more people in our audience, and look forward to having more of these types of insightful conversations. Until then, this is Ask the Programmer.